Q2, we had over 32,000 applications directly tied to this outreach. And so 32,000 applications in one quarter from this specific outreach program.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Stuart Taylor, who's a Senior Manager of Talent Discovery at VMware. During the episode, Stuart shares how VMware are redefining candidate and recruiter experience and how they created campaigns that turned over 3,800 passive prospects into active candidates with a 47% open rate and an average time to open a campaign message at just over 21 hours. Pretty amazing. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Stuart, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me today.
It's nice to see you. I love your background, by the way. For those that can't see it, that are hearing, explain a little bit about your background on Zoom.
So the background that I have today is a VMware branded background, and is catering to our veterans pod. And pod is an acronym we use for Power of Difference. It's a group of individuals within VMware that are either veterans or are friends, allies of veterans, right? You know, folks that have an interest in our veteran community. And it does have the term adaptability in the opposite corner that speaks to, you know, the type of personality that veterans typically carry with them. You know, whatever the job is, we'll get it done.
Nice.
And there are some graphics of different types of veterans, and along with the graphic in the two corners with the VMware veterans as well as that.
The reason I started by asking you that is this is something that's also close to your heart, right? So tell everyone a little bit more about your personal journey and background to where we are today.
Well, that's right. So I grew up on Fort Knox, Kentucky, hence the accent. My family has always had generations in the military. And when I graduated high school, I joined the Marine Corps directly out of high school. I had my 18th birthday in boot camp.
Really?
And,
oh, wow.
Yes, sir.
Was that a lot of pressure? Like being in the family, by the way, of former military? Was there like a unspoken pressure of you're going to go join the military? Like, how?
You know, I don't, it wasn't, it really wasn't. It was just the amount of exposure you just kind of expected. Okay, this is what I want to do. You know, nobody said this is what you will do. We just kind of gravitate towards it, I guess, a calling, if you will. But so at any rate, after a couple of deployments to Africa and the Middle East in the late 90s and early 2000s, the Marine Corps decided to leverage that experience. Right, I was young. I had been able to travel globally. They decided to make me a recruiter. So the last 2.5 years of my experience in the Marine Corps, I served as a recruiter, and that is what launched my career into the civilian sector, into recruiting, and where I am today.
Yeah, I love that language, by the way, the civilian sector.
Yeah.
As I were referred to as the civilians out there. Yeah. What would you say? Obviously, you're now Senior Manager of Talent Discovery. What would you say were the main lessons that you learned from your time in the military as a recruiter that have really helped you in your career?
I would say not to assume. And what I mean by that is don't assume that someone's experiences or someone's life was the same as yours, right? So that may affect their choices, the way that they conduct, their life, their business. And, I learned that by way of the Marine Corps stationing me in a very rural part of Kentucky, right? I mean, Kentucky in itself isn't, it's not, say, New York or anything of that nature, but, by comparison, but in an extremely rural area where there are, towns that did not even have a traffic light, that small. So, to think that everybody had the same background that I did to lead them to the same decisions that I've made, that is something that I learned, that you have to look at and take each and every individual, and treat them separately, and, understand what it is, and try to figure out, what their motivations may be to lead them to not only their choices, but also how they conduct their business and what they provide, to the group as well, their influence and their thought process that they can bring, basically a diversity of thought.
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest lesson I learned, is not to assume.
Yeah. And I'm sure as a recruiter, that's a very valuable lesson.
Absolutely.
That you may have learned the hard way.
Absolutely.
Right. And people want to feel heard, right? They want to feel that this person I'm speaking to actually does care about me and my future, as opposed to just trying to fill another position,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of our biggest choices, in our lives, career choices, right? It's stressful, it's difficult, so having someone that's an advocate for what you want and what you believe, that really goes a long way.
Yeah.
And, just opening up and taking the time to understand, the motivation as to why somebody is even having this conversation with you to start, is paramount.
Yeah. Tell everyone more about your kind of role or responsibilities now, in your current role.
Well, I have the privilege of leading the team of talent discovery across all the Americas, which includes Canada, the United States, and Costa Rica. And our responsibilities are multifaceted. So first and foremost, we're responsible for locating talent. Okay. Now, in addition to that, we're also responsible for influencing hiring strategy, right? By way of delivering market intelligence and having conversations with, the business unit leaders. And, if they're looking to hire this skill set in this particular region, we may, be able to provide some data that say, this is what, you should expect if you're wanting to target this particular skill set in this region. Maybe we should open up the geography a little bit, or manage our expectations around salary and things of that nature. So we have quite a few of those strategic conversations, in addition to locating the talent. So I guess it really starts with developing the strategy surrounding finding the talent, right? Not just jumping in, without any information or data to support, the strategy by which we're going to fill this role.
What are some of the areas that you and the team have identified this year that you really want to focus and hone in on?
So, of course, especially in the technology sector, diversity, that's top of mind for everybody, right? And, that is how we start our approach to finding talent. We start with a diversity first approach. How do we tap into these communities? And one of those being, the veterans community, that we just met, or that we just mentioned. So we start with that approach first. How do we tap into these markets, into these candidate pools? How do we engage with them? How do we bring VMware to the front of their thought process, to top of mind as an employer of choice? So engaging with these folks and providing the relevant content on the front end to create a more educated talent pool is extremely important to us, and that's one of the things that I think that really helps us in that strategy and in how we start our engagement, right? Our search, if you will, for talent is, already looking at these engaged pools that we've nurtured over quite some time.
What are some of the avenues that you're exploring that are working best? Obviously, we've seen a big change over the years from traditionally how we did things to now where companies are, doing TikTok videos. So we've come a long way. What are some of the ways that you're engaging those communities?
Evolution, right? I mean, you constantly have to evolve, or else you'll be left behind. One of the things that we do in talent discovery is we're very adamant about social media advocacy, right? So we do have, a goal for all of our team members to reach we have a point system, depending on reactions, clicks, things of that nature. But we do have folks that, we do drive our folks to share via social media. There is, VMware is, they're in the news for a lot of good reasons, right? So this is content that we want to push out. We just received an award for being the number 2 place to work in IT, right? So we want to share that. So that's one of the avenues that we approach is getting out on social media, doing it as a group, making sure that we're spreading the word of what VMware is. The other is we're really starting to invest in automation. I mean, we're seeing automation everywhere, right? I mean, Chat GPT, I think, is in the news every
Yeah,
day.
can't go a day without seeing it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, automation is huge for us, and that really helps us with those engaged talent pools. So it allows us to not only, after we identify talent, right, it allows us to sort and aggregate these folks according to maybe geography, um, place in their career, the level at which they are in their career, skill set, different things of that nature. And then we're able to tailor content to these individuals and, get this content out to them on a regular cadence to where, we do remain top of mind.
Yeah.
And this has been very successful for us. I was just on an all hands call yesterday with Talent Discovery Global, and through this program, we had an open rate of 58% of our correspondence. That's unheard of.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Is that email or in the platform? Just out of curiosity, just for
that's email.
Email. Wow.
Email, yes,
I didn't believe it was email, which is why I asked that question. So, wow, that is pretty.
It's unbelievable.
Like it's like normally like 15% is amazing. Normally, like 15-20% is normally people are like, whoa, this is great.
No, you're absolutely right. Mid-20s. I mean, if somebody maintains mid-20s, they're like, what's this guy doing? To have that success, how do I replicate that? And then spread it across the rest of the organization. But 58%, that was just delivered yesterday, and that just goes to show, if you have the right content, if you touch folks in a manner that is interesting to them, right, and maybe in a different way that not everybody else is doing, right? I mean, I can send anybody a LinkedIn message, but if I send something to your email that has subject and content that is very specific to you, Chris, I mean, would you not want to take a peek at it and open it and see what it's all about?
Back to your point as well earlier in the beginning of the conversation, it shows that you care and that you actually, it feels personalized. For so long, we just had this one-size-fits-all approach, didn't we, for everyone? Mm-hmm. But now people expect a better candidate experience along the way, and for you to stand out from the crowd, you have to do that. Yeah,
candidate experience. That is something that I hear. That is a focus for VMware, because it leads to a good employee experience, right? If you start off on the right foot, you typically have a good journey, a good career journey. So, that is part of our job. We do have metrics that we are held to as far as candidate experience survey results, that we need to have a certain percentage. So to your point, we do lead with that, what is important to you approach.
Yeah. One of the things that I wrote down from when we first met and which stuck in my mind is you said that you create recipes. I like the way you said it because I wrote it down. And I was like,
that's right.
And I was like, so we was talking about recruiting automation, and I said, how do you do that? And you said, well, like Chris, I sit down with a team and we create a recipe for each of these candidate experiences. Could you share one for the leaders how you're doing that, step by step, and then secondly the technology engine behind it, because that's obviously a big important part of the automation.
Of course. So the word recipe, right? That's the term that is used by the tool that we use, Beamery, for our automated outreach. And so these recipes are, it's very similar to writing a Boolean and using various filters to determine your candidate pool, correct? Mm-hmm. So what we do is, first things first is, I want to reach out to who's going to consume the results of these outreach programs, right? The interested candidates, who's going to engage with these folks. So I want to reach out to them, make sure we have the proper criteria. Are we looking at the proper keywords for maybe this particular skill set, or are we looking for the proper geography to find that particular skill set, or do we have maybe the right titles for jobs at a specific career level? Mm-hmm. So throughout the industry, I think I think everybody knows if you take 5 different companies, a project manager could be called something different across those 5 different companies, right? So, I'll connect with these talent acquisition folks to gather that criteria.
So you all
And
come
then
together. You all come together for a meeting, sit down, and map it out together. Is that how it works?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, in the meeting, it could take an hour, it could take 3 hours, just depending on the complexity, of what's needed and, and the scope of what we're trying to target, But, it's so we have that in-depth meeting that's concentrating specifically on that criteria. Then we transfer that criteria using filters and keywords and things like that into Beamery, the tool that we use. And then we'll run a test case. Is this, providing the results that we would like to see? And then again, I'll go back to those folks that I met with previously to gather the criteria, and we'll review, the candidate pool that we received from the initial run. If we need to make some adjustments, we'll make some adjustments. If we're good to go, then we will launch a campaign with content, and we'll update this content, for each cycle. We'll launch a campaign that has a cross section of, VMware news, job postings that are specific to that career level and that skill set. Industry news as well. It doesn't have to be VMware specific, but just industry news. But basically, it's we want to reach out to you. Here's, some goodness, from us to you, and share it with you, and hopefully, you'll keep us in mind, for your next opportunity or your next venture, or if we reach out to you, you have an interest in speaking with us.
And is that what you feel like is leading to those open rates then? Not just the last bit, it's the entire journey that you've taken him on that leads to that.
I do. And that's the thing, one of the things that I think is also telling is not only the open rate, but we're also able to see how long does it take for someone to open the mail once we send it, right?
Interesting.
And we're able to track that as well, from the time sent to the time open. 21 and a half hours was the last measurable that I saw. That's less than 24 hours, less than one day. People are receiving this email and they're opening it. So,
but they've been nurtured before that, though, right? They've been nurtured before that email in some way.
Well, for some folks, it's their first.
Oh, really?
Email,
okay.
Right. So it's perpetual. As we build these recipes, it's automated to that point. So anybody that goes into our database that meets that criteria is automatically assigned
into it.
To that correspondent. So we could have some folks that have received multiple iterations of that newsletter, if that's what we like to call it, that outreach program.
Mm-hmm.
We have some that are receiving it for the first time.
Yeah. Wow. How many? At what point do you make contact? Do you have certain criteria that they need to have ticked these X, Y, and Z boxes before we outreach to them?
And so we do have within our outreach, we have the ability to click a link that'll say, have someone contact me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It may have a couple questions, that so that we can have a more targeted approach as to whom will contact this person, right? And then we also, with the job links that we have in there, not everybody wants to have an initial conversation. Maybe they just want to apply to the job, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So they'll apply, and we've, in Q2, and this was something I shared at Workday Rising back in September. In Q2, we had over 32,000 applications directly tied to this outreach. So 32,000 applications in one quarter from this specific outreach program.
So for those people that are wondering, how do I justify this to my leadership team?
That's it. There are 32,000 applications that are linked directly to this outreach
when
program,
you were
just in one quarter.
Yeah, one of the challenges for our audience is they're bombarded by different platforms, providers. It's like a minefield, right? There's always a new platform. Why Beamery? Because there's so many different, so many different platforms out there.
I'll be 100% transparent. I wasn't involved. At that point in time, I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I was an individual contributor at VMware, so I was heads down, smiling and dialing, right, reaching out to these folks. When we made that transition to Beamery, so the criteria that they, were looking at when the selection was made, I'm not privy to. But what I can tell you, to be honest, is I'm extremely happy with the robust campaign function, the outreach program that they have. It's done a number for us. I mean, it's one of the best experiences I've had when it comes to messaging in that capacity. it's, I'm really pleased with it.
Yeah, well, that's always good news. And I think the important thing where some of these platforms get it wrong is you have to have a great experience both from the candidate experience side and from with your internal recruiters.
Oh, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, we started, we always talk about candidate experience. That's how we're measured, right? We have a measurable, a deliverable for candidate experience. But we also want to create a good recruiter experience, right? That's our employee. You want a good work environment.
Yeah.
And that is, some of the feedback that I got, and I wrote these down. And again, this, it goes back to what I was speaking to at Workday Rising, right? How does it affect a recruiter? And, one of the biggest things that came back to us was the recruiters were able to concentrate on a more targeted, whenever they were speaking with the candidates, they were able to have a more targeted conversation about the role itself and not selling VMware, because the candidate has already received the employee value proposition, right? They already know, what VMware is about. They know more than just what our products are, but they've had an opportunity to look and see and get some samples of what our culture is through maybe some little videos and things like that we might have in this outreach program. So the candidates come more knowledgeable and well prepared to that conversation. So the recruiters are actually able to find or present better candidates, the folks that, I don't want to say better, but match the role, are a closer match to what the hiring manager is looking for, because they can spend more time with the candidate discussing the role.
Yeah.
Which in turn makes the hiring manager more happy. I mean, it's a snowball effect, right?
And the candidate, right? Because you don't want to have half your conversation explaining this is who VMware is, this is our why, this is our values. You can spend more time focusing on their personal why, their personal values.
That's exactly right.
What they want to get out of the role and what it means to them, right? The other way. Back to our point, right. Back to your first piece of advice earlier.
You can't assume.
You can't assume, right? As well, and I'm sure, more meaningful conversations. That's what they want to spend their time doing, right?
Absolutely.
As well. What is your just out of interest? Like, what does your typical day-to-day look like? I'm just always.
So my typical day-to-day, I spend a lot of time with my direct reports, right? My managers. I have a rock star team. I can't say enough about them, and they do so much. I mean, they're touching on a number of different projects. I was speaking with one of the managers yesterday, and we were talking about career development. Where do you want to go? You're excelling in this role. What do you see next? Where do you want to go? And one of the things that she was talking about was the different types of projects in which she's been involved. I mean, just the ability to have visibility and to influence not just what our team is doing, but how we're impacting different pockets of VMware as a whole, even outside of talent acquisition. So a lot of my day-to-day has to do with those types of conversations, as well as, developing new ways to find efficiency, right? Working with, global people insights, and, working with my leadership and our PMO, what can we do better, and how do we do it better? How do we become more efficient? How do we create a better experience for our individual contributors? How can we make their life easier? Can we reduce the number of clicks, right?
Yeah.
So, that's typically what my day-to-day looks like. And then there's always, the other little fires, if you will, that everybody has, that we need to put out. I mean, the unexpected things that don't show up on your calendar. But by and large, I'm very blessed, in the organization in which I work, and that I've had the opportunity to grow, spend a lot of time touching on things that interest me, as far as, again, finding efficiencies and things of that nature, as well as having the ability to mentor and watch other folks grow.
Yeah. That's really what it's about, right? That's what it's about, right? As a leader, when I first became a leader, I didn't realize that until a while into the role, that my job is to, help other people in my team achieve and help them grow, develop, whether that's in my team or them leaving the business and going to somewhere else in the business, or even to another organization. Our job is to help them flourish, grow, develop, remove obstacles, from them, whilst
Absolutely.
also having a strategic focus on the business at the same time. So it's quite a balance, right? Like you said, to do both. What would you say is like the project or what you've done so far that you're most proud of?
So we have, in my organization, we had a challenge for a number of years as it continued to scale globally. Just 4 years ago, my organization said at 17, I was number 17 that was hired into the organization. We scaled to well over 100 globally. And we didn't necessarily have a proper reporting structure to drive these business outcomes. And, I've fortunate enough that my director, she had the confidence in me and says, look, this is what we're going to do. This is what I want to accomplish. Can you help? Can you take the reins on this? And I said, of course, let's do it. And today we have a very robust reporting structure that, we're able to make informed decisions to not only drive business outcomes, but also when it comes to resource planning. Where do we allocate, resources, whether it's headcount, budget, whatever the case may be. And it's really changed our effectiveness, efficiency, as well as, our deliverables, and ultimately going back to that experience. It's made the experience not only for my team, but also the folks that we partner with on a daily basis, right? That experience is better for them as well.
Yeah.
So it's had the ripple effect, if you will. It's
well,
done
congrats.
quite a bit. So, well, thank you.
What would you say has been? It sounds all amazing, but for everyone listening, but what's been the biggest challenge in the journey? It's great that you're getting these open rates, you're getting the engagement. What for people listening, what advice? Looking back, what advice would you give to them? Maybe what would you have done differently looking back?
Looking back, I think the biggest challenge anytime you implement something new is always going to be change management and adoption. And I believe that is where I think I've had some success, with change management in a very solid adoption rate. Could I have done it sooner though? Are there a couple things that I could have done differently to where I could have had the same adoption rate that I have today? Could I have had it 6 months ago? What are some of the decisions that I made and the way I approach change management that I could have done differently? And to that point, I was allowed that flexibility, which is good. That's a growth for me, right? That's something that I realized, and so I think that that's probably what I would have done differently, is approach change management not just looking at simply my organization and saying, this is the way that we're going to operate, but also let's explore all the other dependencies, right? Not just the immediate dependencies, but the second and third layer. How does that affect other folks, and what influences that I may not be aware of, that may impact adoption?
Yeah.
I need to explore that as well and address those. So, that's probably one of my biggest takeaways. And I learned so much, about change management and adoption and how to do it effectively over the past year.
So how do you do that then? Does that mean, for example, engaging the senior leaders sooner, getting their buy-in into the process, as an example?
So, that's a loaded question. How do you do it? Because you can't approach, I don't think you can approach every single scenario the same way, right? Everything's going to be a little bit different. But what I do think, looking back, what I personally could have done maybe a little bit differently was, maybe start with, the theory. This is why we're going to do this.
Okay.
The why, right?
Start with why.
Developing the why.
Yeah.
Getting the buy-in on the theory, the why, and then start to talk about the benefit and then the outcome as we're developing these steps, right? Versus, okay, this is what we developed. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then having to explain the why and
a lot harder.
Exactly. And that's in transparency. I think, I always try to lead with transparency. I think looking back, maybe should have been more transparent. And this is what we're thinking, especially with some of the managers. And, I'm not going to do it across the whole organization, of course, right? But with the managers who's really going to be the ones to drive and the adoption and day to day, maybe bring them in a little bit sooner. as we're developing.
Yeah, I said that because that's the area that I've seen most leaders fail. Is they kind of do all of the work, get the system, make a decision, then they try and get the buy-in, then they start explaining, hey, this is what this means for you. But if you really want true buy-in, you want them part of the process.
That's right.
You want them to feel like they're making decisions with you, their voice is heard, and not feel you should be hearing doing that, and you should be taking their advice, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to be using it, and they're the ones that are speaking to your clients every day, and your customers and your employees as well. And so I see so many companies, you could have the best tool in the world, best technology, but if you haven't done that part, then it's very difficult. So I think that's great advice for it seems like you did a great job. Despite that, you did a great job anyway. They clearly bought in. I'm sure the fact that they're using it, you're getting the adoption rate. Then that's kind of. But it's a journey, right? It's not something that happens overnight.
It is definitely not a sprint. That's for sure.
Yeah. What are you? What have you got coming up that you're most excited about moving forward?
So we going into the new fiscal year, again, going back to engagement programs, we've done a lot of investment. And again, this is near and dear to me, being a veteran. We're really investing into engaging the veteran talent community. And I'm really excited to see what that brings. I mean, we're going so far as to even open up a position for a program manager that's going to be dedicated specifically to veteran discovery. So, that just makes me happy, to begin with, that investment in the veteran talent community. And, I'm excited to see the outcome, 3-6 months from now as we launch this going into the new fiscal year. So that's what's exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. What I'm interested to know, what are some of the common mistakes you think companies make when it comes to hiring from that community?
From the veteran community, it's a little bit different. It's not, your traditional, graduate, go to university, and then, get a job after graduating university, after receiving your degree. It's a non-traditional, for most companies, path to employment. I think a lot of people, they just haven't had the ability, I don't want to say the ability. They have difficulty translating what someone has done in the military and taking that experience and translating it to industry, into the civilian sector, like I said earlier.
Sure.
Yes, right. Translating that experience. And I think that's where there at times is a disconnect. How do I translate that experience? And I also believe that, there are some folks that, prefer, that have yet to embrace, a multi-pronged approach, if you will, to filling their open requisitions. It's, this has always worked for us, so this is what we're going to do.
Sure.
So those are probably, the two biggest obstacles I see for companies to adopt and embrace hiring veteran talent, is the translation portion, as well as, we haven't done it before and we've been successful, so why?
Yeah, I get that, right? Because, when I think of the military, and some of the most successful people I know have come from the military and transition. You're one of them, right? Yeah, into the role that you're in now. You're now in the civilian side as well. But the skills that you bring over, whether it's leadership, whether it's resilience, it's talking about key. You got to be pretty resilient to be in the military, and the teamwork. And there's just so many amazing power skills that you have. But then how do you then translate that into those particular roles, right? And I can see why companies would have a challenge with figuring it out. But it's so important. It's such an untapped. Some of the most, one of my best sales leaders ever came from the Israeli military, and he came to the UK with literally no money, nothing. I remember he came to his first week on the job. He was just eating plain pasta with no sauce. That's how much. That's how, like, literally. But we used to call him Rambo, and the reason we called him Rambo was because, like, his level of resilience was just unbelievable. Like whenever he would get a no or a rejection or have someone's idea of a bad day, he was just unwaverable. And his ability to stick to the script, to follow the process, was military in nature. And he would even would set himself targets of, all right, I'm not allowed to sit down today until I get a deal. And I'm going to stand up and keep pitching all day. And when I get my deal through, then I deserve a seat. He was extreme, right? But and no one told him to do this, but it was It was really inspiring, like for me, the rest of the team, to see this person who had come from the military and a lot of those skills, and he became a great leader when we recruited a team around him. And I was like, wow! Like I remember my team, my marketing director, my HR director and my sales director, they wasn't going to hire him because they said he doesn't have any sales experience, he doesn't have a degree. And I was like, what are you thinking? He has all of the skills and attributes. We do sales training. He can learn how to sell, right? and all of the things that I personally felt that would make an incredible sales executive. We hired him because before that you had to have 2 years degree, you had to have sales experience, and he became the most successful salesperson ever in the history of the company. And he went on to start his own business a few years later. And so that's kind of, I've had from a number of people that come from a military background that have come in and just blown me away.
Intangibles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the intangibles that, employer will receive in that individual, from the veteran community. The way that they're developed, to your point, this is my objective. I'm going to finish it, period. There's
exactly
no ifs, ands, no buts, no excuses.
No, this is what you're asking of me and I have to deliver. There was a funny story where we had like a global sales competition, and it was so demoralizing that no one else even bothered because they knew he was going to win. Like it was like a running joke in the business where it was like, well, I had to sit down with the rest of the leadership team and say, this is not going to work. Why? And I was like, why? Because people just don't feel like they can win. Like he'll have to feel like they want to be part of it. Whereas Omri was literally living in the office. I used to have to say to him, go home, please. Like take your holidays. I used to tell him, no, you're taking the rest of your holidays. You're not carrying them over to the next year after as well. So I really do hope that more companies invest and do what you're doing. Me as well. Yeah. Listen, before I let you go, I want to jump into our quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you some questions, but you have no longer than 30 seconds to give me some amazing answers. No pressure. Oh boy. What are your hobbies and passions outside of the office? Oh, fishing. I could have guessed that. I feel like I could have just guessed that you're a fisher. I love it. My stepdad's a big fishing, and he just disappears for weeks on end. And can't. Oh, jealous. Oh, you're jealous. Yeah. If you could click your fingers and change one thing about, your industry, recruiting in general, what would you change? I think the way that we're perceived by people outside of the industry. Both candidates and folks outside of human resources. I mean, I've heard folks outside of human resources say, "Why do we need talent acquisition?" Oh, when you have an open requisition, go and fill it yourself and see how that works out for you. And then you'll see the value. But then also, there are some, talent acquisition professionals out there. They have ruined, the reputation with some candidates, for the rest of us because of the way that they've approached those individuals. So, that's probably one of the things that I would change is perception if I could. Yeah, yeah. How do you think your family and friends would describe what you do for a living? Half of them couldn't understand, couldn't describe it. I've been in talent acquisition for 16 years and my mom still doesn't get it. She still thinks you're in the military, probably. Yeah, sometimes I just go with it. No worries. What legacy do you want to leave behind? I want those that report to me, whether it's directly or indirectly. I want them to feel like, if I move on to a different role or whatever the case may be, that they can look back and say that they've learned and gained something from my leadership, in some capacity, whatever it may be. It could be something different for everybody. I don't want it to be, one thing for
for everyone, but in some way, I hope I impact them in a positive manner, and that they can look back and attribute that directly to me.
Nice.
Just one positive thing.
Love that. Love that. What would you say is the biggest investment you've made in yourself?
Ooh, that's a hard one, to be honest with you. But the biggest investment I've made in myself, I believe, is spending time reading literature. I was definitely afraid of becoming a father, right?
Ooh.
But
I know that feeling. I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
Kids weren't on my radar, and now I have two. So I was definitely afraid of it. Just the great unknown. Would I be a fit father? Those are my concerns. So, I spent a lot of time reading, about people that had success and also failures, and what they learned from it, from parenthood. And I hope that, by learning how to, go with or becoming a good father and a leader in a household, that's also translated to me being a good leader with VMware as well.
Yeah.
But I would say, probably for me personally, that was probably the best investment, because I think it helped me become just a more well-rounded individual altogether, and not simply, be a good father.
I'm with you on that. It's kind of one in the same, right? In terms of, and I've only realized that with my 4-year-old Robin, like you're a leader at home and at work as well. And you lead with empathy at home and at work.
That's right.
Too, right? And I do feel like Robin's made me a better leader. To be honest, and I do feel like the work that I do in my company makes me a better dad, vice versa. As well. A lot of the strategies that I use and that I learned from my coaching, I bring back at home.
Absolutely.
Whether that's sitting down for dinner every night with Robin and Tasha, saying, "Hey, and leading with gratitude, saying, what are the 3 best parts of your day?" And that's now like a routine, like it's something that when Robin grows up, that we've been doing for a whole life, of just sitting down and saying, "Hey, what are 3 parts of your day that you most enjoyed?" And we have a chat around it as a family. As well. So love that. Last question. What would be your kind of one parting piece of advice that for other leaders that are going to be sitting in your seat one day doing your role? What advice would you give to them?
The best piece of advice that I would to give them, and something that's helped me. And again, this goes back to what I learned when I was in the Marine Corps, is you have a sphere of influence, right? And it's 360 degrees. And I had leadership roles within the Marine Corps as well. You're responsible in both directions, right? Up, the corporate ladder per se, and as well as to those that report to you. But you have to treat each equally. You have to have the same amount of vigor, enthusiasm, empathy, understanding, and, all the, however you, the same desire you have to deliver, for, my director and so on and so forth, also have to have that same drive to improve and accelerate and ascend my directs and their directs careers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're right, because it does tend to be skewed in one direction.
It can be. Yeah, it absolutely can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris.
No, it's fun, and I'll have to come out. I'll have to come out to meet you, and you can take me fishing. I still haven't been.
I don't need an excuse to get on the water, so all you have to do is show up, my friend.
Yeah, we don't really get that experience in London. There's not really many places to do that as well. And congrats again with the veterans program. Really happy, and I can see how proud you are and what it means to you. And keep up the amazing work. I'll speak to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time today.